If you've ever rented a self-storage unit, I've probably seen a version of your life in boxes. People think those places are boring. Concrete, metal doors, keypads, a cemetery for old furniture and bad decisions. That's what I thought too, before I realized the worst thing in our facility wasn't inside any unit. It was between them, in the folds. I'm telling you this because if you ever see a line on your paperwork that reads, Unit 0, past due, you need to run every credit check you have, quit your job, and never go back through that gate. I learned that too late. My name is Nolan Briggs. For 3 years, I was the assistant manager at a storage facility out in Pinellas County, Florida. I won't name the company, but you've driven past it. Bright colors, smiling lock mascot, billboards about first month free. From the road, it looked harmless, like a big, tidy closet for the whole county. I worked swing shift, afternoons to close. It fit my life. Errands in the morning, then clock in before the after-work rush. Divorces, hurricanes, downsizing, side hustles. People dragged their crises through our glass door and left them behind metal curtains. The property itself was standard issue. A white stucco office, green roofs, long beige buildings marching away behind a black iron gate. The keypad at the entrance leaned on a crooked metal post. At night, the little LED screen glowed a soft green and greeted you by unit number when you punched in your code. It always felt friendlier than it deserved to. By the time this started, I knew the place better than my own apartment. I knew which doors squealed, which lights flickered, which tenants would talk your ear off if you gave them more than a nod. I could tell the time by the noise, the 5:30 rush, the 7 o'clock lull, the lonely clatter of carts after 8. My manager, Shayla, lived for the numbers behind all that. Delinquency percentages, insurance conversion, incident-free days, those were her gospel. Corporate sent weekly scorecards like lab results. If we missed target by 0.5%, she'd clench her jaw and start composing emails before the report even finished printing. If we don't push auctions, the system punishes us, she liked to say, tapping the stack of lien notices on the counter. You're either collecting rent or clearing space, Nolan. There's no sentimental column. I had way too much sentimental column. I was the soft touch, the guy who gave one more day or let someone in just this once after hours. It wasn't noble. It was avoidance with a name tag. Saying no felt like slamming a roll-up door on a version of myself. So when the weirdness started, I did what I always do with things I don't want to deal with. I told myself it was a glitch. The first time I saw it was a weekday in July, one of those Florida afternoons where the sky can't decide whether to be blue or black. Storms had rolled through, leaving the asphalt steaming and the office air conditioner wheezing. Shayla had gone to a regional meeting, so it was just me in the lobby with the buzz of the fluorescents and the hum of the old desktop. Our management software sat open in the middle of the screen, a familiar grid of unit numbers, tenant names, last payment dates, amounts owed. I'd clicked through it so many times that my eyes could drift and still snag on anything red. That day, they caught on something else. Right there in the list, like it had always belonged, was a line that simply said, Unit 0, past due. Not as a big alert or pop-up, just another row. Unit number on the left, then a tenant field that was completely blank, a balance of $0, no last payment date, and that status line, past due, in sharp red letters, as if it owed money it didn't technically have. We don't have a Unit 0. The numbers at our property start at 101 and go up. I could picture the laminated site map under the counter, Buildings A through D, rows of little rectangles with neat labels. No zero, no basement row, no hidden wing. My hand crept closer to the screen without me realizing. I leaned in until my breath fogged a faint patch on the glass. The more I stared at that line, the less it felt like a display error, and the more it felt like a typo in reality. I moved the mouse and clicked on it. The system made a dull error thunk, like I'd tried to open a window that wasn't really there. Every other line in that report would open a detail panel on the side. Names, phone numbers, payment history. This one just spun the cursor for half a second and snapped back like an elastic band, leaving nothing behind. "Okay," I muttered. "Cute bug." The hairs along my arms didn't think it was cute. They'd started to lift in a slow wave. I refreshed the report. The screen flickered once. The list redrew itself. Unit 0 vanished. The rows closed ranks, unit numbers flowing together as if nothing had ever been between them. I sat back in my chair and listened to the building. The air conditioner chugged in the wall. Somewhere in the hallway behind the office door, metal pinged softly as it cooled from the day's heat. A delivery truck down on the road honked, the sound flattened by the glass. All of it was normal, but my shoulders had crept up toward my ears without me noticing, and there was a tight buzzing under my skin that didn't match the lights. I opened a different menu just to see if the system would hiccup again. Accounts, gate history, payment screen. Every list looked boringly intact. No zero, no extra unit, no red where it shouldn't be. Finally, I slid open the drawer beneath the counter and pulled out the property map. The plastic cover squeaked under my fingers. My index finger traced the tiny printed rectangles. A 101, a 102, a 103. I walked the whole site with that finger, building by building, even the row of small units in the back that we almost never rented. No zero, not even on the legend. For a second, I just stood there with the plastic sheet in my hands, the edges digging into my palms hard enough to leave little grooves. The rational part of my brain said I was tired, that I'd misread the line, that maybe it had said 801 and my eyes had filled in the rest. The tighter, quieter part, the one that keeps track of the stuff you shove aside, whispered that I should take a picture next time. Save proof. Next time, I told myself. I said it out loud, like I was talking about some harmless software quirk and not making a promise to something I didn't understand. By the time the after-work rush hit, Unit 0 had already started to feel like a weird detail from a dream. I smiled, nodded, printed receipts, listened to people explain why they were late or why they needed more space. A woman whispered about a divorce. A guy joked about the hurricane doing his decluttering for him. Real problems stack up fast in a place like that. It was easy to believe a phantom line on a report didn't deserve space in my brain. Hours later, after I'd locked the office and keyed out through the gate, I sat in my car for a moment with the engine off and both hands resting on the steering wheel. The facility lay behind me in the rearview mirror, a dark block ringed with just enough light to pretend it was safe. My pulse was still a little too fast for the time of night. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that of all the things I should be worried about, rent, car payments, a credit score hanging on by its fingernails, a disappearing line on a screen didn't matter. I told myself it was nothing. Driving home, though, the road lights strobing past the windshield, every time I blinked I saw that line again against the dark. Unit 0, past due, glowing in the same soft green as the keypad by the gate. I should have known that when a place like ours says something doesn't exist, it usually just means they don't want to talk about it. The next morning I downgraded the whole thing from omen to stress. That was the only way I could get ready for work without feeling like I was walking back into a trap I couldn't name. I shaved, burned my tongue on coffee, scrolled my banking app just long enough to remind myself why I couldn't afford to quit. The numbers there felt more real than any phantom unit. By the time I pulled into the lot, I'd filed Unit 0 under brain glitch and slammed the drawer shut. Florida mornings don't let you lie to yourself for long. The sun hits every crack in the stucco, every oil stain on the asphalt. There's nowhere for shadows to hide. Our facility looked exactly like it always did. Clean, bland, forgettable. If something was wrong, it wasn't in the paint. Shayla's car was already in her spot. That was my first hint it wouldn't be a normal day. She was at the counter with her tablet when I came through the glass doors, dark hair scraped back, a half-finished energy drink sweating beside the keyboard. The printer was chattering, spitting out pages in a steady rhythm. She didn't look up. "Morning," I said. She stabbed a button like it had insulted her. "Our delinquency report looks like a horror movie." "That bad?" She slid a stack of paper toward me without ceremony. "That bad." Names and unit numbers marched down the page. Beside them, columns of amounts owed. Red highlights bled through the cheap paper where people were more than 30 days behind. There were a lot of red highlights. "Storm season plus inflation," she said. "Everybody's late on something. Corporate wants us below 6% by the end of the quarter. We're flirting with 9. 9%. The number sat in my throat like a pill I couldn't swallow. 9% meant lien notices, overlocks, auctions. It meant turning boxes of somebody's life into lot number 3 for strangers to paw through. "So we push notices?" I asked. "We push everything." She swiped through a dashboard on her tablet. I caught a glimpse of a bar chart, our location in angry orange against a field of calm green. Calls, emails, texts. Friendly voice, serious content. And, she finally looked at me, we stopped handing out extensions like Halloween candy. Heat crept up my neck. She cut me off with a little tired laugh. "Relax, Briggs. You're not the only softie in this district. But I need you on policy this month. No more just one more day unless it's a genuine emergency and you log the hell out of it. Copy?" "Copy," I said. It wasn't like I didn't understand. The math was simple. If enough people didn't pay, eventually we wouldn't get paid either. I told myself the knot in my stomach was just about that. Money, awkward conversations, not about a line I might or might not have seen. The morning blurred into ordinary problems. A guy argued about a rate increase. A woman was furious her ex-husband still had a gate code. A contractor wanted to store chemicals we definitely weren't allowed to store. My hands moved, my mouth said all the right lines, my brain stayed half a step back, listening for something wrong. It didn't take long. Around noon, when the stream of customers thinned, I slid behind the desk to enter a batch of payments. The screensaver flicked away, replaced by the account grid. I opened the delinquency menu out of habit more than intention. The list filled the screen: names, balances, due dates. My eyes tracked instinctively along the worst ones, the ones likely to tip into lien. And then there it was again. Unit 0. Past due. This time there was no question of misreading. It sat dead center in the middle of the page, as if the whole list had rearranged itself to give it room. Unit number 0. Tenant field, empty. Balance, $0. Status, past due, that same angry red, like it owed something less obvious than money. My hand moved before I decided to let it. I didn't click, not yet. I just sat there with the cursor hovering above that line, listening. The air conditioner's steady breath. Somewhere in the hallway, the faint squeak of a cart. The crackle of the printer cooling. Nothing else. I glanced at the office doorway. Shayla was in the back, on the phone. Her voice leaked through the wall in polite, professional tones I couldn't make out. No one else was there. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, fingers suddenly a little slick. I opened the camera and aimed it at the monitor. The screen flared white in the preview, the letters dissolving into glare. I shifted until the angle was right and the text sharpened. The second my thumb drifted toward the shutter icon, the lines stuttered. Not the whole page, just that row. The red letters fuzzed, broke apart into tiny blocks, snapped back together in a different pattern for a heartbeat. I couldn't read what they said in that split second, only that it wasn't past due. Then Unit 0 vanished. The list closed up like water. My phone captured the image anyway. When I looked at the photo, the report looked perfectly normal. No zero, no anomaly. Just the neat little grid and my own reflection warped across the glass, eyes wide, mouth half open. A thin chemical smell edged into the office air, like new plastic. I set the phone down carefully, as if a harder motion might crack whatever logic was holding this in place. Maybe the system was pulling from some test database. Maybe IT had pushed an update overnight. Explanations lined up one after another, all of them flimsy. "We good out there?" Shayla called from the back. "Yeah," I said, voice a touch too high. "Just running reports." "Start flagging liens on anything over 30, she said. "We'll print notices this afternoon." I minimized the screen like that would help. If I didn't look at it, it couldn't get stranger. That was the lie I was buying when the door chime rang. Ms. Darlow came in like she always did, clutching her purse strap, hair the color of old snow piled on the side of the road. "Afternoon, Nolan," she said, leaning on the counter like she was settling in for coffee. "You busy?" "Depends," I said. "If you're here to yell about your rate again, I'm swamped." She gave me a look over the tops of her glasses. "You know I don't yell, I petition. What can I do for you?" "I think my code's acting up." She pulled a wrinkled note from her purse with the 6 digits we'd assigned her months ago. "It made me put it in twice yesterday, and when I left, the speaker said something funny." The keypad at the gate had a little tinny voice that we mostly ignored. It was supposed to say things like "access granted" and "code invalid" in the cheeriest monotone a cheap speaker could manage. Half the time it cut out mid-word. "What did it say?" I asked. She frowned, trying to rewind the memory. "Not the exact words. It was the way it paused, like it was trying to decide who I was. First it said one unit number, then it changed its mind. I know that sounds silly." The skin on the back of my neck went tight. "Usually it just blurts out your unit and welcome," I reminded her. Maybe the speaker glitched. "It said Unit 0 first," she said quietly. Then it corrected itself to mine. For a second, all the background noise stretched thin. The hum of the lights, the AC, even the traffic hiss outside. Everything stepped back a pace. "You sure?" I asked. She straightened, offended in the particular way only certain older women can pull off. "I was a school administrator for 30 years, Nolan. I know how to listen. It said 0 first, like it was reading off a list and caught itself." I forced a breath into my lungs. It went in shallow and stuck high in my chest. I'll have Hector look at the speaker when he comes by, I said. In the meantime, if it ever does something weird again, just let it cycle and try once more. Don't follow anyone else in. Don't walk through behind a car. You know the drill. Her mouth softened. You always say that, like you're worried I'm going to get in trouble. I am worried you're going to get in trouble, I said. That gate log is picky. Any weirdness out there and I drown in emails. She laughed and shook her head. Oh, heaven forbid Nolan has to write an email. I'll behave. She slid her purse strap up higher and turned toward the door. As she pushed it open, the little chime jingled, bright and harmless. Sunlight poured across the lobby floor, catching the stack of lien notices waiting to be printed, the edge of the counter, my hands. Hey, Ms. Darlow, I called. She paused on the mat. Yes? If your code ever makes you swipe more than twice, or says something you don't like again, don't come in. Just pull over and call us. I mean it. Her eyes searched my face. Whatever she saw there wiped the amusement away. All right, she said. I'll call. The door closed behind her. The lobby went back to humming and buzzing like nothing had happened. I looked at the monitor. The delinquency menu sat minimized in the corner of the screen, its little icon pulsing faintly like it was breathing through a straw. It was waiting for me to click it again. The delinquency icon kept pulsing in the corner of the screen like a little heartbeat, waiting for me to click and start turning people's lives into paperwork. I told myself that was the only reason my palms were damp when I finally moved the mouse. Don't make me chase you on this, Briggs, Shayla said as she came back into the lobby, tablet in hand. Corporate wants lien notices out today, not when you feel like dealing with it. I'm on it, I said. She studied me for a second. You look like you slept in your car. Just bad coffee, I said. I'll make a fresh pot after this. She let it go. The back office door closed with that soft, hollow click I'd heard 1,000 times. The printer sat ready beside me, lid half open, like it was waiting to be fed. I maximized the delinquency menu. The grid bloomed across the monitor. Unit numbers, names, balances, due dates. The morning's payments had knocked a few people out of the red. Plenty of others stayed put. I started down the list, confirming addresses, checking that everything matched the file. For about 30 seconds, I felt almost normal. No ghosts in the numbers, no phantom units. At the bottom of the first page, I hit Next. There it was, Unit 0, past due. This time, it anchored itself to the very top of the second page, like it had called dibs on that spot. Same blank name field, same $0 balance, same bright red status, as if the system was mad about a debt it couldn't quite define. My stomach folded in on itself. Okay, I whispered. Let's see how you like witnesses. Briggs? Shayla called from the back. You printing those? In a sec, I said. Just checking addresses. I forced myself to look away from the line. Instead of clicking it, I selected every other past due account on the page, careful to skip over the 0 like it might bite. Print notices, I murmured, more to myself than the computer. Everything but that. The print dialog popped up, asking if I wanted to generate lien letters for the accounts I'd checked. I clicked Confirm. The grid slid aside, mercifully hiding Unit 0 while the system composed its angry form letters. The printer woke with a sigh and started spitting out pages. Warm paper smell filled the lobby, a dry, fuzzy scent that dragged up memories of school copy rooms and detention slips. I stacked the notices into neat piles as they came. Each one had a unit and a name at the top, followed by the same corporate paragraph about past due balances and potential auctions. A312, Lopez. B204, Grant. C119, Abdel. Ordinary people, ordinary trouble. Halfway through the batch, a page came out that felt wrong before I even looked at it. The font was the same, the letterhead was the same, but the paper itself felt cooler when I picked it up, like it had been sitting somewhere else before it went through our machine. I frowned and flipped it over. The layout mimicked every other notice, down to the little dear valued tenant at the top. Only this one didn't have a tenant's name filled in. The line where it should have been was blank. And instead of a specific unit and balance, the body started with something my eyes didn't quite want to focus on. Our records indicate that your account is past due. Account type, internal staff. Unit, 0. The words weren't laid out as neat labels on the page, not really, but that's how they landed in my head, one after another, like a list of accusations. The skin on my arms pebbled. Behind me, Shayla's footsteps thumped down the hall. Without thinking, I flipped the notice face down on the counter and slid a different stack over it. "How's it looking?" she asked, coming around the corner. Her perfume cut through the paper smell, sharp and citrusy. "Got our little horror story printed?" "First batch is done," I said. I kept my voice steady. "About a dozen to post and mail." She plucked one from the top, scanned it, nodded. "Okay, once you've got these on doors, we'll tag team callbacks. Maybe we can scare a few of them into paying before we actually have to overlock." "Sounds good." Her gaze lingered on me for half a second longer than usual. "You sure you're all right?" "Just not looking forward to getting cussed out all afternoon," I said. That, at least, was true. She snorted. "Comes with the shirt. I'll be in the back drowning in month end. Holler if anyone comes in crazy." When she disappeared again, I waited until her footsteps faded before peeling the odd notice off the counter. I read it a second time, slower. Account type, internal staff. Unit, 0. The ink lay perfectly normal on the fibers. The toner smudge under my thumb was the only thing out of place. But as I held it, there was a faint tingling where my skin met the word internal, like the paper was trying to pin something on me personally. I folded the letter in half, then in half again, until it was a stiff little square. Instead of dropping it in the outgoing mail tray, I slid open the bottom desk drawer and buried it under a stack of old rate sheets. The metal rails rattled when I shut the drawer. The noise sounded too loud in the empty lobby. My phone buzzed. For half a second, my brain fed me the stupid idea that it might be the system texting me. That somewhere, behind all these screens, it had my number now. The display said Hector. He was our regular auction guy, the one with the box truck, the easy laugh, and the habit of calling whenever he smelled a big lien cycle coming. I answered. "Hey, Hector." "Yo, Nolan, you cooking anything this week?" he said. "My other facility just canceled an auction, and I'm trying not to lose a day." "Give me a few hours," I said. "We're printing notices today. If half these people keep ghosting, you might have a feast next week." "That's what I like to hear," he said. I could hear traffic roar under his voice. "Oh, and hey, random question. Y'all got any weird units down there? Glitched ones?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Define weird." He chuckled. "Like admin screw-ups, ghost units. I was talking to a guy in Largo. He said their system showed a Unit 0 for a minute. Everyone freaked out, then it disappeared. Probably an IT thing, but..." He trailed off, waiting for me to jump in. People love turning software bugs into ghost stories, I said. My throat felt dry. We're boring over here, just regular deadbeats. Sure, he said. I'm just saying, if you ever do get some phantom unit, slap a lock on it and call me. I'll haul whatever's in there, no questions. A lock. A claim. Yeah, I said. I'll keep that in mind. After I hung up, the office felt smaller. Quieter. Like the air had thickened and was pressing in from all sides. I opened the gate log. Out of all the screens in our system, that one always felt the most like spying. Every entry had a timestamp, a code, and a translation of who had come and gone. It was our alibi list and our accusation list rolled into one. I filtered for the previous evening. There I was at 8:57 p.m., my staff code clocking out through the gate. The line read exactly the way I remembered leaving Felt. Uneventful. After that, the log should have gone calm until the first contractor showed up this morning. It didn't. At 10:42 p.m., another entry sat quietly in the list. Same staff code, same gate, same little notation the software used when it thought a person had driven in. My chair creaked. For a second, I honestly thought the floor had shifted under me. I clicked on the entry. A side window slid open, filling itself with details. Date, time, code, result, associated unit. For a breath, the last field said 0. Then, right in front of my eyes, the 0 blinked out. The space emptied. When the refresh finished, the box was just blank, as if it had never held anything at all. My skin crawled. I backed out of the details and clicked the event again, just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. The panel flashed white for a half-second longer this time, like the system was starting to lag. When the text reappeared, the associated unit line was completely gone. Not blank, just missing. As if it had decided that piece of information was too embarrassing to keep on record. I knew exactly where I'd been at 10:42 p.m. I'd been on my couch, shoes off, half watching a crime show while I scrolled my phone. If the gate log said my code had opened the property at that time, then either the log was wrong, or someone else, or something else, had used it. A line from Ms. Darlow floated back, like it was reading off a list and caught itself. My hand drifted to the screenshot shortcut. I captured the log view, opened the image. In the frozen picture, the associated unit field was just empty space, as if the software had already scrubbed the momentary 0 out of every version of itself. The only physical evidence I had of any of this was folded in my drawer, in a notice the printer insisted it had never made. From somewhere down one of the halls, faint and far away, came the metallic clatter of a lock hitting concrete. The kind of small sound you wouldn't think twice about if the building was full. A dropped padlock, someone bumping their cart. The facility was supposed to be empty. The sound came again, metal on concrete, a clean little clack that didn't belong in an empty building. I sat there with my hand still on the mouse, listening. Nothing followed it. No footsteps, no voices, just the hum of the AC and the distant rush of traffic outside the fence. If the log was right, there shouldn't have been anyone on the property but me. I told myself I was going out there because of safety, liability, all the words they use in training. Not because I was suddenly very aware of how alone I was. I didn't do the horror movie thing and just stroll out bare-handed. I opened the drawer under the front counter, grabbed one of the heavy flashlights, and wrapped my fingers around it until the knurled metal bit into my palm. "Shayla?" I called toward the back. "You hear that?" "What, the printer?" she shouted. "Never mind," I said. I'll check the halls. The lobby door to the interior corridor had a narrow vertical window. I peered through first. The strip lights were on, buzzing like they always did, stretching down a long tunnel of roll-up doors, beige metal, scuffed walls, gray concrete. No people. I swiped my badge on the reader by the door. The little box beeped and flashed green. At least that still made sense. I stepped into the corridor. It was cooler in there than in the office, the kind of cool that settles in concrete. It smelled like cardboard, dust, and a thin edge of that plastic tang again. My footsteps echoed in a way that made it easy to imagine someone walking right behind me, half a step out of sync. "Anyone still in the building?" I called. My voice bounced down the hall, came back smaller. I walked slowly, flashlight down, but ready. The motion sensors woke the lights ahead in segments, a strip flicking on, then the next, while the ones behind me dozed back to dim. Every door I passed had its number printed in the same plain black-on-white plaques. A 114, a 115, a 116. The order of them settled my nerves a little, numbers that behaved. Halfway down the row, I saw it. A lock lay on the floor just outside a 120, perfectly centered between two doors, like someone had set it there on purpose. It wasn't one of the cheap brass ones tenants bought from us. It was one of ours. Thick, stainless, disc-shaped, with the company's little smiling padlock logo pressed into its face. The shackle was open. The door above it was down and secured with the tenant's own padlock. No red overlock bar. No sign that anything had been cut or removed. There was no reason for an overlock to be lying there. I crouched, knees popping a little, and picked it up. The steel was cool against my skin, but not cold like it had just come out of the rain, more like it had been sitting there for a few minutes. When I tilted it, the internals gave a tiny rattle that made my teeth ache. "Nolan?" My name coming down the hallway made me jolt so hard the flashlight jumped in my hand. I straightened too fast. The world swam for a second, edges going white. Shayla stood at the far end of the corridor, framed in the light from the lobby windows. "You okay?" she called. "Yeah," I said, heart thudding. I held up the lock. "Did you drop one of these?" She walked toward me, setting off the sensors as she came, each overhead strip fizzling awake. "No, I did inventory on the Overlock cart this morning. We were all accounted for." She took the lock from me, turning it over with brisk fingers. "This is ours. It shouldn't be out here." "Maybe it fell off the cart," I said. "Rolled." She jerked her chin toward the far end of the hall. "Rolled uphill?" I hadn't noticed it before, but she was right. The corridor sloped, just slightly, toward the opposite end. You only really felt it when you pushed something heavy. I'd cursed it 1,000 times shoving overloaded carts. The way the lock was sitting made no sense. My back prickled. "Whatever," she said after a second, though her brow was furrowed. She snapped the shackle shut with a sharp click that made both of us flinch a little. "I'll put it back with the others. Maybe somebody got cute and decided to play games with our stuff." She glanced at the door beside us. "This unit's current on rent. No liens. If somebody is screwing around in here, I want them on camera." "Yeah," I said. "Of course." She started back toward the office. Halfway there, she turned. "And Briggs? Don't go into any overlocked units by yourself," she said. "You know the policy. 2 people, or we make sure a camera has you the whole time. No exceptions." A bubble of nervous humor tried to climb up my throat and died halfway. I know, I said. I'm not eager to be an example in a safety video. It's not just videos, she said. Last year in Orlando, an assistant manager went into a lien unit alone after closing. They say he fell off a ladder, broke his neck. Corporate is very allergic to sequels. The way she said, "they say," stuck in my head. I'll follow the rules, I told her. She nodded, disappeared through the door at the end. The light from the lobby flared, then dimmed as it swung shut. I stood there a moment longer in the corridor, listening to the buzz of the fluorescents and the soft tick of metal cooling behind closed doors. The air felt fine now, just storage facility chilly again. Whatever wrong note I'd heard seemed to have folded back into the background hum. I swiped my badge on the interior reader again just to hear it chirp, and went back to the office. For the next hour, I did what the job demanded. I became the guy with the tape and the stack of notices. That's something they don't tell you when you apply. How many times your knuckles will hit metal in a day. How the adhesive fights you when your hands start to sweat. How different someone's name looks written under the words "Notice of Default." I moved down each hallway, matching numbers to doors, smoothing paper against cool steel. The building smelled like dust and old cardboard, with occasional whiffs of other people's lives: fabric softener, motor oil, cheap cologne. Twice, in different buildings, the numbering did something that made my scalp tighten. In one row, I counted A209, A210, A211, rounded a corner, and found myself staring at A213. For a second, I thought a whole door had gone missing. When I doubled back, A212 was there behind me on the opposite wall, tucked into a little dead-end alcove where you'd never see it if you didn't deliberately look. In another row, it was C118, C119, and then C121 ahead, with C120 squeezed behind a pillar I'd swear hadn't been there last week. It wasn't impossible. Old sites got weird. Blueprints changed mid-build. Contractors took shortcuts. But paired with invisible units in software and locks appearing where they shouldn't, little skips like that felt less like sloppy design and more like scars. Places where someone had rearranged reality's furniture and left the dents. By the time I posted the last notice, the afternoon heat outside had gone from bright to syrupy. The sky through the far exit door was the color of dishwater. A storm was thinking about forming. I headed back to the office. The air inside hit my sweat-damp shirt and raised a shiver. Shayla was at her desk in back, headset on, voice in that half-sweet, half-steel tone she used for people who wanted more time than policy allowed. I slid into the chair at the front counter, shook my hands out, and reached for the mouse. The delinquency icon in the corner of the screen pulsed once, like it had been holding its breath. I clicked. The report reappeared, same as before. Units, names, balances. Where Unit 0 had been a little while ago, there was now just the usual sequence of numbers. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe, not that it had never been there, but that maybe the system had given up whatever game it was playing. Then I noticed a new column. It was narrow, squeezed in between status and last payment date, as if an extra label had been jammed into a space that wasn't meant for it. The heading was in the same bland corporate font as everything else. One more little piece of vocabulary we hadn't been trained on. Claimed by. Most of the rows under it were empty. A few had automatic entries, company, pending auction, third party. It might have meant nothing more dramatic than, who gets the money if we end up selling this one? My skin didn't believe that. I scrolled down the page, throat dry. About halfway down, next to a unit I recognized, B204, Grant, 90 days late, the guy Shayla had been threatening all morning, the new column wasn't blank. A single word sat there in neat little letters. Internal. It was tiny, harmless looking. If I hadn't been staring for it, my eyes might have skipped right over. But after the misbehaving gate log and the notice in my drawer, it landed like a verdict. For the first time since I started at that place, I had the clear, unwelcome thought that maybe our system wasn't just keeping track of units and tenants and balances. Maybe it was keeping track of us. The rest of that shift is smeared in my memory. Not because nothing happened, but because too much did, in too many ordinary ways. Collections calls, walk-ins, a guy melting down because his wife had thrown his stuff into storage during a trial separation. The kind of chaos that fills your ears and leaves just enough space in your head for the wrong thought to sneak through. Claimed by internal. That little label sat in its gray box on the screen, as neat as a rubber stamp. Every time I opened the report, my eyes went to it like a magnet. It didn't feel like a status. It felt like a finger, pointing at something I wasn't ready to look at. By 4, the lobby had that late afternoon heaviness. The light coming through the front glass had gone from harsh to syrupy. Outside, the lot looked flat and too bright, like a photograph with the contrast turned up. Shayla stood at the counter stapling lien notices into tidy sets. Door copy, mail copy, office copy. Her phone chimed every few minutes with another email from corporate. Mine lay face down beside the keyboard. "What's claimed by?" I asked finally. She didn't look up. "What's what?" "In the report." I jiggled the mouse and brought the grid back up, angling the monitor so she could see. I pointed at the new column. "This thing. Claimed by." She frowned and stepped closer, one palm flattening on the counter as she leaned in. "Huh. That wasn't there this morning." "You didn't add it?" I said. "Do I look like IT?" she muttered. "If I could add columns, I wouldn't still be here explaining late fees to people who think we're a bank." She clicked through a couple of menus on her tablet, frowning at whatever regional dashboard she had. "Must be some risk tracking thing they're piloting, probably for legal or insurance." "It says internal on Grant's unit," I said, tapping B204. She opened his account. Payment history, contact info, chain of notes. Nothing looked any different than it had at noon. "Means corporate's handling it," she decided. "Or wants to." Either way, you ignore that column. Make the calls, plaster the doors, let the big brains play with their labels. We're just here to do the steps. It should have made me feel better. Someone else's problem, somebody above my pay grade. Instead, the words on the folded notice in my drawer pushed up in my mind like a bruise. Account type, internal staff, unit 0. "Right," I said. "Policy steps." Not long after that, corporate called. The display just said private number, which always hits my stomach the same way as "we need to talk." I answered anyway. "This is Nolan." "Briggs, hey!" a bright male voice chirped. "Curtis from Regional Support. Got a sec?" I recognized the name from mass emails about leveraging opportunities and brand loyalty. "Sure," I said. "What's up?" "Seeing some anomalies on your site metrics," he said cheerfully. "Nothing to panic about. We're piloting a new risk tracking tool and your location's giving us some interesting data." "Is that what the claimed by column is?" I asked. There was the tiniest pause. Paper rustled somewhere on his end. "You're already seeing that." he said. Thought we still had it in back-end only. Guess the rollout hit live views early. It popped up this afternoon, I said. Most of it's blank. One says internal. Right. His tone smoothed out again. That's just a way for us to flag accounts with additional sensitivity. Employee units, legal holds, VIPs. Helps us avoid embarrassing situations. We don't want to accidentally auction your grandmother's Christmas decorations because someone missed a memo, you know? He chuckled. I don't have a unit here, I said. Oh, for sure, that was just an example, he said quickly. From your end, nothing changes. Follow lien timelines, keep your notes up to date. If you see internal on an account, maybe give your manager a heads up before you slap a notice on anything. That's it. My eyes drifted uninvited to the drawer where the Unit 0 letter sat. What about system glitches? I asked. Weird units showing up on the report that don't match the sitemap. He shifted gears so fast I could almost hear it. Like what? I almost laid it all out. Disappearing line items, a gate log that corrected itself mid-click, a keypad calling Ms. Darlow Unit 0. Standing there with the phone pressed to my ear, I could already picture the notes he'd type while I talked. Staff expressing unsubstantiated concerns, possible stress issue. Like someone fat-fingering a number, I said instead. A 0 where there shouldn't be. We don't want to send lien notices to a unit that doesn't exist. He exhaled sharply, a not-quite laugh. Happens all the time. If you see anything that doesn't match the sitemap, screenshot it and email it to me. We'll clean it in the back end. Whatever you do, don't try to fix it manually. Got it, I said. Hands off. Exactly. His voice warmed back up. The system knows what it's doing better than we do most days. A little joke at the end. Anyway, I'll let you get back to saving the world one delinquent account at a time. Appreciate you, Briggs. The call disconnected. The dial tone morphed into the hum of the AC without missing a beat. The system knows what it's doing better than we do. A drop of sweat slid from my temple down to my jaw. I wiped it away and realized my hand was trembling. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough, I told Shayla. She looked up from her screen. Again? You just posted notices. Yeah, just double-checking nobody peeled anything off. She shrugged. Knock yourself out. Grab the Overlock cart while you're out there. We'll need it ready for tomorrow. The Overlock cart lived in the back hallway, a warped metal skeleton on squeaky casters with a bin of disc locks on the bottom shelf and bolt cutters hanging off the side. The lock we'd found on the floor sat on top. I dropped it into the bin where it hit the others with a dull, too heavy clack. I should have asked her to come with me. Policy said 2 staff for any overlocked unit. I wasn't planning to overlock anything. I was just doing a walk. Middle of the day. Lights on. Gate closed. Every rational factor leaned in my favor. The irrational ones were louder. I pushed the cart anyway. The bad wheel squealed every few feet, giving the cart a little limp. Lock, lock, squeal. Lock, lock, squeal. The sound scraped at my nerves as I worked my way down Building A, checking tape, tugging notices to be sure they were stuck. Halfway along one corridor, I noticed the ceiling was wrong. It wasn't dramatic. No missing tiles, no black mold, nothing you'd photograph as evidence. The grid just jogged. One row of acoustic panels shifted a couple of inches to the left, making a tiny zigzag overhead that didn't match the straight lines I'd walked under for 3 years. I stopped under it. looked back. The misalignment vanished when I compared it to the rest of the hallway. Looked forward again, and there it was. A little bend in the pattern, like someone had cut the building and glued it back together slightly off. Right under that jog, the air felt thicker. Sounds dulled. My own breath came back to me half a second late, like I'd dialed my own number. "Get a grip," I muttered. I pushed the cart forward. The bad wheel rolled smoothly over concrete, then caught for half a heartbeat as we passed that seam. The bolt cutters swayed and clinked against the frame. I told myself it was nothing. A quirk of construction, a trick of perspective, and I kept moving. A 130, a 131, a 132. I worked on autopilot, check tape, snap photo, move on. My body did the job while my brain built a rough mental map of where I was. The far end of this row should have been the emergency exit, the red exit sign, the crash bar, the smoker's door I'd leaned against 100 times. A 133, a 134, a 135. The smell of the corridor shifted gradually from cardboard to something sharper. Plastic, detergent, shrink wrap. The air thinned and cooled. A 136. After that door, there was supposed to be a wall. Instead, the corridor kept going. The lights overhead buzzed a notch louder. The lines of the walls felt elongated, like someone had grabbed the end of the hallway and pulled. A 137 waited a few steps ahead on the right, its number plaque as tidy and unremarkable as any other. For a moment, every part of me argued. You're tired. You're mixing up buildings. If you don't check, you'll think about this all night. If you do check, you might not sleep at all. My fingers dug into the cart's handlebar. The metal bit back. 2 people or cameras, Shayla had said. No exceptions. I glanced up at the corner of the ceiling. A little black dome camera stared down. Its red light glowed steady. "You're here," I said under my breath. "You count." I left the cart in the middle of the hall and walked to A137. Up close, the door looked like all the others, except for one detail. No tenant lock, no old sticker residue. Just the building's keyed latch and a fading decal that said, "Authorized personnel only." The tag on my keyring read A137 Utility in Shayla's cramped handwriting. My hand didn't feel like mine when I slid the key in. The lock resisted just long enough to make me think it wouldn't turn. Then it gave with a reluctant clunk. I lifted the roll-up door halfway. Cold air flowed out around my ankles, wrapping them in a band of freezer burn. It smelled sharply of plastic and dust, and that faint detergent taste I'd picked up near C119 later. The overhead bulb flicked on by itself, whirring to life. It wasn't a closet. It was a unit. And it was full, from concrete to corrugated ceiling, of wrapped shapes, every one of them cocooned in cloudy, thick plastic, banded tight with dull gray tape. On the back wall, just above eye level, a single disc lock hung from an empty bracket. It swung very gently from side to side, like someone had just let go. Every instinct I had screamed that I'd opened the wrong thing. Utility closets don't breathe. They cough out mop stink and chemical air, then go back to sleep. This space exhaled. The cold came out low, around my shins, thick and steady, as if something in there had been holding its breath and chose that moment to let go. It wasn't freezer cold. It was the dead chill you get in a room that's been sealed for too long. I kept the door at waist height. I wasn't giving it more than that. Wrapped shapes filled the unit, 3 deep, stacked all the way to the corrugated ceiling. Big, small, fat, narrow. every one of them cocooned in cloudy, mover-grade plastic. The thick stuff, layered until anything underneath stopped being furniture and became just volume. Tape banded them with dull gray belts, around middles, across corners, crisscrossed at angles that tried to erase where one object ended and another began. You can tell a lot about someone by how they pack. Some people build neat little towers of labeled boxes. Others stuff their lives into trash bags and hope. Whoever had done this had treated every object like a biohazard. No cardboard, no exposed edges, no accidental glimpse of a chair leg or a lampshade, just anonymous bundles. I knew better than to cross the threshold. Even in a normal unit, the rules were clear. No going in alone without a second staffer or eyes on you from a camera. No touching contents unless something was about to fall and crush you. No rummaging. We weren't allowed to care what was in there. We were just supposed to care if it paid on time. "This shouldn't even exist," I whispered. My voice sounded wrong in that space, too soft, swallowed by the plastic and metal. The word "shouldn't" bounced back at me, thinner. I raised the flashlight and let the beam slide along the front row of bundles. The plastic crinkled where the light hit, throwing back warped highlights. Underneath, the shapes weren't uniform. Some were couch-sized lumps. Others were long and narrow, like stripped-down bookshelves. A few were the size and proportion of a human body, with just enough extra bulk that my brain could still call them boxes without panicking. Boxes, I told myself. Just boxes under weird wrap. People do this. Keeps out moisture, keeps out roaches. Totally normal. None of them had labels. That was the detail that went under my skin and stayed there. No marker scrawls. No kitchen or winter clothes or misc. Even the most obsessive neat freak writes something on at least one strip of tape. These were clean, smooth, forgetful. Except for the zeros. It took me a minute to notice them. On some of the tape bands near the front, someone had written the same thing over and over. Not words, just a single character, repeated until the ink bled. 0, 0, 0. They weren't even neat. Just thick, anxious circles that overlapped and wobbled. Here and there the marker had slipped and gouged the plastic, leaving little tails of ink like comets. The back of my neck prickled. I lifted the flashlight toward the far wall. That's when the lock caught the beam. It hung alone on an empty bracket, the kind of metal loop we used for securing brooms or hoses in closets. No broom here. No ladder. Just one of our disc locks, suspended for no good reason. It swung just enough to be noticeable, a slow, sympathetic arc. There was no reason for a lock to be there. Locks go on latches, on hasps, on things that close. This one had volunteered for decoration. Our logo was stamped in the center, the same little smiling padlock face that grinned from every brochure and billboard. I'd seen it so many times it barely registered anymore. Now, though, the smile looked crooked. The curve dipped lower on one side, like someone had dragged their finger across the metal before it cooled. For half a second, it had an expression. Not happy. Not threatening. Sorry. Static hissed at the edges of my hearing. I realized I was holding my breath again, ribs locked, lungs burning. A strip of plastic near the door crackled. It wasn't the gentle crunch of plastic settling. It was sharper, like knuckles cracking under cellophane. One of the nearer bundles shifted an inch toward me, enough that the bottom edge scraped the concrete. I flinched and reflexively let go of the handle. The door wanted to slam. I grabbed it with my other hand before it could drop, muscles firing on pure panic. The metal bit into my fingers. "Don't," I breathed. I wasn't sure who I was talking to. Myself? the unit, whatever had just moved. My phone vibrated against my leg, a sudden buzz that nearly made me throw the flashlight. I fumbled it out, still clinging to the door with my free hand. A text from Shayla blinked on the screen. "How's it look out there? Any tape casualties?" For a second, I just stared at the words. The normalcy of them felt obscene compared to the air knifing around my ankles. I thumbed back a reply, one-handed. "Notices are fine. Found something weird. Utility door is an actual unit full of stuff. Coming back." The typing dots appeared, vanished, reappeared, longer than usual. Actual unit? Like someone converted it? "Get back in the office. We'll check the map." I swallowed. My tongue tasted like metal and plastic. "Fine," I muttered. I eased the door down, inch by inch. The wrapped shapes watched me in a way that had nothing to do with eyes. The last thing I saw before the metal cut off my view was that lonely disc lock, still swinging its slow, apologetic pendulum. When the door met the ground with a soft thud, the air on my side warmed a couple of degrees. The buzzing in my ears retreated. The hallway went back to smelling like concrete and dust. I locked it. That felt important. I slid the key into the latch and turned until I heard the deadbolt shoot home. Then I yanked up on the handle to make sure it caught. Whatever lived in there, it could stay pressed against metal and rules. The camera in the corner ceiling dome watched quietly, red light steady. "You saw that," I told it. "If anything happens, you saw it." The cart's handle was slick with sweat when I grabbed it. I made myself finish the walkthrough, check tabs, snap door photos for the file, because if I ran straight back to the office, I was afraid I wouldn't go down that hall again. By the time I rattled the cart back into its spot in the back hallway, my legs felt disconnected, like I was walking on borrowed joints. Shayla was already at the desktop when I came in, the site map open on the screen and the laminated paper version in her hand. She'd pulled both up at once, the way she did when she smelled a problem. "Show me," she said. I leaned over her shoulder and tapped the corridor I'd just come from. "Here, after A136, the hall keeps going. There's a door labeled A137. Utility key opens it. It's not a closet, it's a packed unit." She followed my finger on the map. The digital version highlighted the boxes as she hovered. A130, A131, A132. At 136, the row simply ended. The next click jumped to another building. "There's no A137 on this run," she said. "Ends here. You sure you're not mixing it up with B? They're laid out almost the same." "I could walk A in my sleep," I said. My voice came out sharper than I meant to. "The sign says A. The key tag says A-137 utility. And whatever's in there is real enough to make the temperature drop." She set the laminated map down and pulled up the master unit list, typing 137. Results popped up. B137 vacant. C137 occupied. D137 not used. Nothing under A. "Nothing," she said. "If there is an A137 out there, it's not in our system." "Then who's paying for it?" I asked. She shrugged, but there was a new pinched line between her eyebrows. "If nobody is, that's a bigger headache. Corporate hates dead space." I thought about the zeros scribbled on tape. The lonely lock on the bracket. The way the plastic had leaned closer to the door when the light hit. "Can we pull camera footage from that hall?" I asked. "For the last hour or so." "Not directly," she said. "All our feeds dump into that DVR box in the closet. We don't get free scrub. We have to request clips and wait for corporate to bless us." "So request it," I said. "Market safety. Say we found a door that shouldn't be there." She chewed the inside of her cheek, thinking, then nodded. "I'll open a ticket. They respond faster when you say safety concern instead of your blueprint sucks. But until we hear back, stay out of there. That's an order." "Believe me," I said. "I'm not curious enough to go back in." She closed the maps and brought up the delinquency report again. My gut tightened at the sight of the claimed by column, like I'd forgotten a test was today. Something new had appeared. Not in the 0. Not in B204 where internal sat like a bruise. About halfway down the list, next to a mid-building unit we hadn't talked about all day, C119, 3 months behind, the claimed by field had filled itself in. Tenant. Lowercase, neatly centered. My first read was the obvious one, claimed by the customer, as in no third-party lien, some boring legal shorthand. Then the words shifted in my head. Letters stayed the same, meaning slid sideways. Not a role, a title. The room felt smaller. The hum of the fluorescent tubes thickened. Somewhere out in the corridor, metal scraped softly. Not a crash, just the sound a heavy lock makes when it starts to swing. For the rest of the afternoon, that one little word just sat there. Claimed by Tenant. Not on every line, not even on every ugly 3 months late account. Just on C119, middle of building C, like the system had quietly decided that one didn't belong to the company anymore. It belonged to someone else. Shayla glanced at it once and shrugged. "Probably just means it's going straight to auction," she said. Tenant claimed, as in no third party. "We'll get a memo in 6 months." "We never got a memo about internal," I said. "You read too many horror threads," she replied, and then her phone rang and she was shoulder deep in another negotiation about partial payments and cutoff dates. I tried to let it go. Really tried. But every time my eyes landed on that column, my brain wouldn't see it as a status anymore. It read like a signature. By 6, the weather outside matched my mood. The sky had gone from dishwater gray to that heavy greenish color that means this is going to be bad. The parking lot shimmered under a thin film of water. The glass fogged just enough that the gate was a smudge of metal and light. Shayla checked the clock, then her phone. "If nobody else comes in by 7, I'm cutting out early," she said. "My sister's car died. I promised I'd grab the kids." "Yeah, of course," I said. We were technically open until 8, but closing with one of us there was normal. I'd done it 100 times. It had never felt like this. "Shoot me a text when you do final walk," she added, gathering her things. "And Nolan, I meant it. No solo heroics. Any Overlock work waits till tomorrow." "Got it," I said. She scooped up her tablet and the last of the notices, tossed me a weary half-smile, and pushed out into the damp heat. The bell over the door chimed cheerfully. The gate camera feed showed her car crawl out, headlights streaked with drizzle. The bars slid shut behind her like a mouth closing. Suddenly it was just me. Me. The hum of the lights, the slow tick cooling of the printer, and the soft hiss of the AC. I killed time with closing rituals so I wouldn't stare at the monitor, counted the drawer, wiped the counter, emptied the trash. The mundane heft of the garbage bag, coffee filters, takeout wrappers, a ruined roll of tape, grounded me for all of 10 seconds at a time. At 6:42, the email arrived. The desktop pinged. I flipped the screen back to the inbox and saw the subject line. Urgent. C119. Overlock required tonight. My mouth went dry. The sender was one of those generic corporate addresses that usually delivered training links and morale posters. I opened it. Due to compliance review, Unit C119 must be secured with company Overlock before 23:59 today. Gate access for Tenant has been suspended. Please complete per policy and confirm with time-stamped photo. Below that, there was the usual block of manual text, stripped of its bullets but still obvious. 2 staff present, or 1 staff with direct camera line of sight for the whole time. Do not delegate to third-party vendor, internal staff only. Those 3 words, internal staff only, felt like a hand on the back of my neck. I checked the clock. 6:43. There was no logical reason it had to be done right then. I picked up my phone and called Shayla anyway. She answered on the second ring, wind and traffic loud in the background. "Tell me we're being robbed," she said. "I could use an excuse to turn around." "We got a compliance email," I said. My voice sounded thin in my own ear. "They want C119 Overlock tonight. Internal staff only, and it has to be done before midnight." She swore softly. "Of course they do." "They're insisting on policy," I added. 2 staff or cameras." "We don't have live cameras in the hallway," she said. "Just that miserable DVR box. Remember Orlando?" "I remember," I said. The picture she'd painted earlier, the assistant manager alone in a lien unit, a ladder, a broken neck, flashed behind my eyes. There was a pause where I could hear her blinker ticking. "Okay," she said. "Here's what we do. You wait until close, lock the office, do final walk with the overlock cart so it looks normal on the logs. When you get to C119, you do not set foot inside. You hang the overlock from the hallway, you take a photo, and you get out. The camera in that corridor sees the doorway. If anything looks sketchy, it'll be on tape." "That's still solo," I said. "It's the best we've got unless you want me to turn around in the middle of a bridge in a thunderstorm," she said. "You text me when you're back in the office. If I don't hear from you by 9, I start harassing you until you answer." "Okay," I said. "Copy." "Nolan?" "Yeah?" "Don't open anything that's not on the map," she said. "And stay the hell away from A137. The line clicked as she merged into traffic. I stared at my phone until the screen went dark, then set it down like it might burn me. Outside, the storm finally committed. Rain hammered the parking lot, loud enough that I could hear it over the AC. Water streaked the windows in vertical rivers. The keypad at the gate glowed faintly through it all, a little green eye blinking in the dark. I finished closing prep on autopilot, checked the restrooms, turned off the lobby music, counted the drawer again even though the totals matched. Every checklist box ticked was one more excuse not to think about Building C. At 7:58, the gate log showed one last exit, a contractor's code, truck leaving in a spray of water. The bars clanged shut behind him. No more tenant codes after that. No one left to come in or go out but me. Final walk, I told the empty office. It sounded braver than I felt. I rolled the overlock cart out of its corner. The bad wheel squealed in complaint. The bin of locks on the lower shelf rattled with a dull chorus. I picked one up, a heavy disc of metal with our idiot smiling logo in the center, and let it rest in my palm for a second. "Just you and me," I muttered to it. "Quick in, quick out." The joke landed flat even to my own ears. I keyed into the interior hallway. The reader chirped and flashed green. The fluorescence woke ahead of me in segments, stretching out a bright tunnel. The storm became a muffled roar, as if the rain had been turned into static and pumped through the walls. Building C was at the far end of the property, past a covered walkway that turned wind into a weapon. I braced myself and shoved the cart through the staff door. Rain hit my face sideways, cold and hard. In the fraction of a second before I ducked under the overhang, I felt like something bigger than weather pushed at my chest. The key reader at C's entrance blinked slower than usual, its red light smearing in the wet. When it finally flicked green, I hauled the cart inside. The corridor felt colder than the others. Storage buildings are never exactly warm, but this was different. The air had weight. The dust smell was sharper, edged with paint and new concrete, like the building hadn't completely finished becoming real. Threaded through it all was that now familiar scent: plastic, detergent, shrink wrap. The "no smoking" sign glared down at me from the first section of wall, its bright red circle weirdly vibrant under the fluorescent light. Someone had doodled a tiny straight-line mouth under the stick figure's head, 2 dots, 1 flat curve. It looked too much like our lock mascot for comfort. "Stop it," I told myself. Numbers marched along the doors. C112, C114, C117. I knew the stories behind some of them: landscaping equipment, baby gear, a guy who always paid in cash and always late. The cart's limp was worse in this building. The bad wheel scraped every few feet like it was catching on something I couldn't see. Halfway to where I knew 119 should be, the air shifted again. Colder, thinner. My breath started to show in front of my face in little ghosts. The buzz of the lights dropped half a tone. My own footsteps sounded like they were coming from just over my shoulder instead of under me. I glanced up at the camera dome in the ceiling. Little black bubble, steady red light. Somewhere in the dark belly of the office closet, a hard drive was turning this into hours of boring footage. "You're watching," I said under my breath. "You've got me." C118's door was the usual storage mess: a tenant's padlock, a shred of blue tarp stuck under the rubber seal. I stopped the cart beside it and looked ahead. C119. Closed. Tenant lock in place. A strip of old tape glued crooked near the bottom of the door, whatever had been written on it chewed away by time. The number plaque above it was perfectly ordinary. The smell hit me like a hand over the mouth. Plastic, laundry detergent, styrofoam from new appliances. That same wrapped room breath I'd felt at A137, concentrated and stale. It oozed out from under the roll-up like it had been waiting. I forced myself closer. 1 step. 2. I didn't cross the threshold. I didn't touch the handle. I took the overlock in one hand, leaned in from the hallway, and hooked it onto the empty part of the hasp without letting the tenant's lock move. The metal felt heavier than it had in the bin. The overlock snapped shut with a clean, final click. There. Done. I held up my phone with my free hand and snapped a photo from the hall. The door, the 2 locks, the edge of the cart. Proof. Compliance. Finished, I breathed. From inside C119, something knocked back. Not a crash. Not somebody kicking. One solid thud, exactly where my hand had been a second before, like a fist testing the thickness of the metal between us. Every muscle in my body clenched. Boxes settle. Furniture shifts. Gravity wins small fights all the time in storage units. I tried to hand the sound to that explanation. Then came a second knock. Slower. Lower. The kind of tap you'd make if you were seeing how hard you could hit without actually denting anything. My breath fogged thicker. Until that moment, I hadn't realized how cold it was. Each exhale came out in a pale puff that hung in the air and drifted toward the crack at the bottom of the door. Behind me, halfway down the hallway, the Overlock cart moved. Not a jolt, not a slide from my hand. It rolled, smooth as if someone had taken hold of the handle and given it a confident push. The Overlock cart rolled like it had finally made up its mind. It wasn't dramatic, no metal crashing into my back, no jump scare slam. It just glided, smooth, confident, 2 full feet down the corridor toward me. The bad wheel that had been limping all day suddenly forgot how to limp. The bin of locks rattled. The bolt cutters clinked on their hook. The whole frame whispered over concrete as if someone with a good, steady grip was behind it. My body moved before the rest of me caught up. I stepped sideways, pressing my shoulders flat to the opposite wall. "Stop," I heard myself say. It came out thin, more plea than command. The cart obeyed. The bad wheel squeaked once, then went still. It stood there like an obedient dog waiting for the next whistle. C119's door shivered. Not a full shake, not a bang. A fine, trembling vibration ran through the steel, just enough to disturb the reflections from the fluorescent tubes above. Light crawled along the ridges of metal in tiny ripples. The sound it made was worse than a hit would have been. No slam, just a tight, continuous creak, like weight shifting very carefully against the inside of the roll-up. "Tenant?" I called, because silence needed a name. "If you're in there, you're not supposed to be. Gate access is cut. This isn't a joke." I waited for the usual human responses. A muffled laugh, the shuffle of shoes, somebody swearing, anything. The only answer was that slow creak. Not frantic, not trying to get out. More like leaning, listening. My breath came out in ragged little clouds. Each one drifted toward the gap under the door and flattened there. The Tenant padlock on the hasp didn't twitch. The overlock I'd just added swung once, twice, then settled with a soft tick against the metal. To any camera, this whole scene would look boring. Closed unit, 2 locks, empty hallway. Beside the bottom corner of the door, the metal skin bulged outward for a heartbeat. It was tiny, the kind of swell you could blame on a badly loaded couch. It pushed, relaxed, pushed again. Like someone inside had leaned shoulder or forehead against the wall and was pressing just hard enough to feel the cold. The smell of plastic and detergent thickened. It coated the back of my throat, turned each swallow into work. Behind me, the cart's bolt cutters rattled again, a soft jangle that sounded way too much like a chuckle. I edged backward until I was almost directly under the camera dome. If anything went wrong, I wanted to be a silhouette in that red light eye, big and undeniable. "You're getting this," I whispered up at it. "You're seeing this." Static hummed somewhere deep in the building, or maybe it was just my own blood. "All right," I said louder, trying to sound like I believed it. "I hung the lock. That's the job. I'm done." The word "done" bounced back down the corridor. Something tapped, very gently, against the overlock. 3 little knocks, evenly spaced. Not on the main door this time. I could hear the difference. It was hitting the new lock. The sound was thinner, with a little ring inside it, like knuckles against a hollow metal disc. Tap, tap, tap. I pictured a hand on the other side, feeling along the seam, finding the fresh weight, taking its measure. Every part of me screamed to turn and sprint. Corporate training pulled the other way. Don't run, don't trip, don't create an incident. Don't be the crazy one in the report. I took one step back. The cart rolled with me this time, slow and compliant. The bad wheel remembered its limp, catching every few inches. We inched down the corridor together, me and the thing with all the locks, retreating without turning our backs. C118 slid into my peripheral. The smell of detergent thinned a fraction. I kept C119 at the edge of my vision until I reached the building entrance. The door didn't slam open. No hands clawed through. No monster burst out. It just sat there, closed, locked. Humming with a cold I could feel even from halfway down the hall. When I pushed through the staff door into the covered walkway, the sound of the storm hit like applause. Rain drummed on the metal roof. Wind shoved at my chest and face. For the first few steps, I couldn't tell if my legs were shaking from cold or adrenaline. I didn't stop moving until I'd shoved the cart back into its niche in the back hallway hard enough to rattle the whole frame. The office lights felt wrong when I stepped in, too warm, too yellow. My fingers fumbled on the alarm panel. It took 2 tries to hang the keys on their hook. I forced myself through the closing checklist, locked the cash drawer, shut down the lobby PC, armed the office alarm. Each little chirp of confirmation sounded like a small, fragile yes in a world that had just shown me it was comfortable changing answers mid-sentence. When the panel finally flashed armed, I grabbed my bag and headed for the front door. Outside, the gate waited in a curtain of rain. Headlights from the road smeared across the wet asphalt. The keypad glowed in its little metal box like it always did. I punched in my staff code. The speaker crackled. "Access granted," it said in its flat, cheerful tone. The gate started to move. Bars clanked, chain whined. Then the voice came back on after a tiny, unnatural pause. "Welcome, internal account." I almost stalled the car pulling out. The next morning, there was an email in my personal inbox before I'd finished pouring coffee. The subject line looked like a court date, incident review for our site number. The sender had risk in his title. The body of the message was short and clean in that way bad news always is. According to their logs, I had deviated from policy in my handling of C119. Gate records, they said, showed multiple after-hours entries associated with my staff code. Camera review confirmed patterns consistent with unauthorized solo access to a lien unit. They wanted me at the district office Monday at 9 for a corrective action meeting. A PDF was attached. I opened it with fingers that didn't feel like part of my hands. It was a printout of the previous night's gate history. Late entries were highlighted in gray. My 7:58 p.m. exit was there, exactly where it should be. That part matched my memory. Then came 2 lines I'd never lived. 10:42 p.m., my staff code tagged as coming in. 10:53 p.m., the same code tagged as leaving. Both entries had a little note in the field where the system linked an access event to a unit. Not a number, just a single word. 0. At the bottom of the page, in a shaded box, a summary spelled out the accusation in corporate language. My access pattern was consistent with a staff member returning a loan to a lien unit after hours. Under that, a line labeled Associated Account named the offender. Internal staff claimed. My coffee sat cooling on the counter. I didn't remember putting the mug down. I called Shayla. She answered on the first ring. "Tell me you didn't go back last night," she said, skipping hello entirely. "You know I didn't," I said. "You got my text when I got home." "I know," she said, "but they've already flagged it. They're saying the system has you coming and going after close. They've stamped C119 as fully under lien now. They're calling it tenant claimed." "The system's wrong," I said. "The camera saw exactly what I did. One lock, one photo, out." She let out a broken half laugh. "We don't get to see what the camera saw. We only get their recap, and their recap says you broke policy." "What about the ticket you opened on A137? I asked. "The extra unit? The zeros on the tape? Did they say anything about that?" Silence hissed on the line for a moment. The only sound was the AC in her office, blowing over a situation neither of us could cool down. "They say footage from that hallway is within normal operational parameters," she said finally. "No anomalies, no mention of an extra door, no safety concern logged." I pictured the wrapped shapes leaning forward in that cold air, pressing closer to the crack of light. "They're going to pin this on me," I said. "Yeah," she said quietly. "They are." She didn't promise to back me up. Maybe she did. Maybe she couldn't. At that point, it didn't matter. I could already see myself sitting in some beige conference room under bad art and worse lighting, while people with printouts asked why I'd chosen to deviate and if I might be under unusual stress. They would ask why I hadn't reported perceived system irregularities sooner. And any answer that involved invisible units and talking keypads was only going to go one way. I don't work there anymore. We went through the motions, the meeting, the calm voices, the insistence that I wasn't being punished, just separated for cause. They showed me still images from the cameras, me with the cart, me with the lock, me in the hall. Nothing of the cart moving on its own, nothing of the door shivering, nothing that would make a lawyer blink. They handed me a severance packet and a page of phrases that meant, "Don't come back." Before I turned in my keys, I went back to the office one last time to empty my drawer. The folded lien notice I'd hidden was still there under the old rate sheets. For a second, I half expected it to be blank when I opened it, or to have somebody else's name. It had gotten worse. The header was the same, the tone was the same, but where the account type line used to just say internal staff, it now spelled out a full name. Mine. Underneath, the unit line had been filled in with a crisp single digit. 1. No building letter, no aisle, no row, just the number, sitting there like a door in the middle of a wall. I didn't show it to Shayla. I didn't take it to HR. I folded it back up and slipped it into my pocket like a guilty thought. It lives in my desk at home now, between old tax forms and my lease. Every few weeks, I take it out and check, half expecting the words to crawl a little further down the page. So far, they haven't. The job hunt since then has been educational. Storage companies talk. One manager actually used the phrase compliance culture while telling me they were moving forward with other candidates. I'm pretty sure that somewhere in whatever shared system they use, my name has its own little tag. Internal, incident, claimed. A few nights back, when sleep wouldn't come, I did something I wish I hadn't. I made an account on one of those online storage auction sites, the kind where people buy mystery units for content. I told myself I was just checking whether C119 had gone to sale yet, that if I could see its pictures, boxes, furniture, junk, I'd proved to myself it had been normal all along. The listings blurred together. Half-open doors, sagging cardboard, stains nobody wanted to think about. Each little thumbnail had a line under it with the facility name, unit number, auction status. Then I saw one that made my finger freeze. The photo was barely a picture at all. A dark doorway, door just high enough to show a strip of concrete and the hint of wrapped shapes in the gloom. It looked like whoever took it had held the camera out, snapped, and yanked their hand back. Underneath, the text read, "Unlisted location, Unit 0, past due, internal staff." My heart did something ugly. I clicked the listing. The page blinked, then threw up a generic, "This auction is no longer available" message. When I went back to the main list, the thumbnail was gone. The entries had slid together, erasing the gap it had left. I sat there in my dark apartment, laptop glow turning my hands corpse pale, listening to the soft hum of my own refrigerator and the occasional car hissing past outside. The walls creaked in that normal way old buildings do when they settle. None of it felt normal. I thought about what Curtis had said on the phone, back when all this was still just interesting data to him. The system knows what it's doing better than we do. Maybe he was right. Maybe there is a Unit 0. Not on any printed map, but squeezed into the space between numbers when nobody's looking. A slot the system uses when it doesn't know where to put something or someone yet. Maybe when you spend enough time moving other people's pasts around, the software decides you're just another piece of inventory. A debt, an error, an account. I don't know if the tenant, that's what I call it when I let myself call it anything, is tied to that space the way a person is tied to their storage unit. I don't know if it grew out of bad code and human greed, or if it was already there and just needed a system to speak through. I just know this. Some nights, when the street light throws a square of pale orange onto my bedroom wall, I hear metal give a tiny clink from the corner. Not loud, not threatening, just the soft, rhythmic swing of a lock hanging from nothing. And every time I close my eyes, just before sleep finally drags me under, I can taste that cold, plastic-edged air at the back of my throat again. It feels like standing in front of a door that isn't on any map, with a number you're not supposed to see, waiting for the system to decide who it's going to claim next.